A ship thought it was safe in international waters, hundreds of miles from the Persian Gulf, hundreds of miles from the war zone. Its crew had just completed a multinational naval exercise in the Bay of Bengal and were heading home. Nobody on that ship believed they were a target. Nobody on that ship heard anything coming. Then a single torpedo detonated beneath the keel of the Iris Dana, and the Mauj-class frigate that represented the pride of Iran's southern fleet slipped beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean 20 nautical miles south of Sri Lanka. 80 sailors were killed, 32 were rescued, 100 more were never found. It was the first time an American submarine had killed an enemy warship with a torpedo since the final days of World War II. 80 years. And when it happened, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood at the Pentagon podium and described it with 2 words that are now being studied in every naval war college on Earth. Quiet death. That phrase is not just a headline, it is a doctrine. And understanding that doctrine is the only way to understand how the United States Navy destroyed Iran's entire naval presence in the Gulf of Oman in less than 48 hours, sank or destroyed more than 20 warships in the first week of Operation Epic Fury, and reduced one of the most asymmetrically capable regional navies in the world to, in the words of Pete Hegseth himself, combat ineffective, decimated, destroyed, defeated. This is not a story about firepower alone. Every military has firepower. What the U.S. Navy has that no other force on Earth possesses in the same combination is a kill chain, a sequence of steps from finding a target to destroying it that is so refined, so rapid, and so deeply integrated across multiple platforms and domains that by the time an adversary realizes they have been found, the weapon is already in the water. To understand what happened to Iran's Navy, you have to understand each link in that chain, and you have to understand how years of preparation made the execution look, from the outside, almost effortless. It was not effortless. It was the product of decades of investment, doctrine development, and quiet positioning that most people never see, and the Iranian military fatally underestimated. Let's start at the beginning. Not February 28, 2026, when the first strikes hit. The beginning of this kill chain was months earlier, in the patient work of finding, tracking, and cataloging every Iranian naval asset that would eventually become a target. Intelligence preparation of the battlefield is a term that military planners use to describe the process of building a complete picture of the enemy before the first shot is fired. For the U.S. Navy in the months preceding Operation Epic Fury, this meant persistent surveillance of every Iranian naval base, every ship movement, every maintenance pattern, every fuel loading operation, every change in crew rotation. Satellite imagery from commercial providers like Planet and Vantor, combined with classified national technical means, gave American intelligence analysts a real-time picture of exactly where every major Iranian surface combatant was located at any given moment. Open-source intelligence analysts noted in the weeks before Epic Fury began that a remarkable number of Iran's largest surface ships had not dispersed. They were sitting in predictable locations, concentrated at the primary naval bases at Bandar Abbas and Konarak. This is the first intelligence failure that cost Iran its navy. Dispersal is a basic principle of military survival. When you know a strike is potentially coming, you spread your assets out to complicate targeting, to force an adversary to use more munitions to achieve the same level of destruction, to ensure that some portion of your force survives to fight another day. Iran did not do this, or did not do it effectively enough. The carrier strike groups were visible. The buildup of American forces was visible. President Trump posted publicly on January 28th that a massive armada was heading toward Iran. And yet, when American intelligence examined the satellite imagery in the days before Epic Fury began, Iranian warships were still concentrated at their home bases, following their regular patterns, as though the publicly announced American buildup was a bluff that would not be called. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper described it with deliberate understatement when he said that the two carrier strike groups had squeezed the Iranians and pushed them back into their own ports. That framing is important. It was not just that Iran's ships were in port. It was that American naval positioning had shaped Iranian behavior in the weeks before the operation, funneling their ships into exactly the locations where they were easiest to find and easiest to destroy. The second link in the kill chain is the sensor network that provided continuous awareness of those locations right up to the moment the first weapons were fired. The U.S. Navy's ability to maintain persistent maritime surveillance in the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman is a combination of space-based assets, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft operating from carrier decks, P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, submarine-based intelligence collection, and surface ship radar networks. When these systems are integrated, and in the weeks before Epic Fury they were operating at full tempo, American planners had what intelligence officers call a common operating picture with near-zero ambiguity about where Iranian naval assets were located. This matters because the speed of the kill chain depends on how quickly you can go from having a target location to having a weapon on that target. If you have to spend time searching, that window closes. Targets move, targets disperse, targets go to general quarters and start shooting back. The U.S. Navy's kill chain is designed to operate so rapidly precisely because its sensor network eliminates the searching phase almost entirely. By the time Epic Fury began on February 28th, every ship in Iranian inventory had been located, categorized, and assigned to a weapon system or a strike package. The targeting picture was complete before the first aircraft was launched. The third link in the chain is electronic warfare and cyber operations, and this is where the kill chain becomes truly decisive. In the opening minutes of Operation Epic Fury, before a single kinetic weapon struck a target, U.S. Cyber Command and electronic warfare assets began systematically degrading Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond. Iranian radar networks were fed false data or blinded entirely. Command and control communications between the IRGC Naval Headquarters and its field commanders were jammed or intercepted. The satellite-based monitoring assets Iran had developed to track American naval movements were specifically targeted to deny Tehran the situational awareness it needed to mount a coordinated defense or order a dispersal of its remaining naval forces. The effect of this opening phase cannot be overstated. When you degrade an enemy's ability to communicate and see in the opening seconds of a conflict, you are not just making individual weapons more effective, you are collapsing the entire decision-making architecture that a military depends on to respond. Iranian naval commanders at Bandar Abbas could not reach their headquarters. They could not confirm what was happening at Konarak. They could not coordinate a response between the IRIN conventional Navy and the IRGC Navy's fast attack boat fleets. They were blind, they were isolated, and they were already burning before most of them understood that the operation had begun. Into this degraded environment, the Navy's strike assets arrived with overwhelming precision. The surface ship contribution began with Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers firing Tomahawk land attack missiles against shore-based targets, including the Iranian naval headquarters, missile storage facilities, and command and control nodes. The USS Thomas Hudner was photographed firing a Tomahawk in support of Epic Fury on March 1st. The USS Pinckney had fired earlier. These are surface combatants operating in waters Iran monitored continuously. The fact that they could fire without any effective response from Iranian forces is a direct measure of how completely the electronic warfare and cyber phase had degraded Iran's defensive capability. A surface ship firing Tomahawks is not invisible. It is visible, trackable, and within range of Iranian anti-ship missile systems. The reason those systems did not respond is because their crews could not communicate, could not confirm targeting solutions, and in many cases were already under attack from other directions simultaneously. The fourth and most consequential link in the kill chain for the naval battle specifically was the submarine force. And this is where the concept of quiet death becomes not just a phrase but a strategic principle that explains everything about how Iran's Navy was destroyed so rapidly and so completely. American fast attack submarines, the Virginia-class and Los Angeles-class boats operating in the 5th Fleet and 7th Fleet areas of responsibility had been conducting intelligence collection and pre-positioning operations for months before Epic Fury began. This is routine for American submarines. They operate forward, they operate persistently, and they operate in complete silence. Iranian anti-submarine warfare capabilities, while they existed on paper, were never tested against the acoustic signature of a modern American nuclear attack submarine running quietly in deep water. The Kilo-class submarines Iran operated, purchased from Russia in the 1990s, were themselves considered relatively quiet boats. But Iran's surface ships and maritime patrol capabilities were never able to locate American submarines operating in their waters. The passive advantage belongs to the hunter, not the hunted, when the hunter is a Virginia-class submarine and the hunted is a surface navy with degraded sensor capability and disrupted communications. When the kill order came, American submarines were already in position. They knew where the targets were because the sensor network had been feeding them targeting data in real time. The weapons were already loaded. The firing solutions were already computed. The sequence that followed, the sinking of Iranian warships at Bandar Abbas, at Konark, in the Gulf of Oman, and most dramatically in the Indian Ocean hundreds of miles from the main battlefield, was the execution of a plan that had been prepared in detail before any Iranian sailor knew a war had started. Let's go through the specific naval assets that were destroyed and what each loss means for Iran's maritime capability, because the list is not just a body count. Each ship class that was targeted represented a specific node in Iran's layered naval strategy, and the systematic elimination of those nodes was not random. It was the kill chain working exactly as designed. The Jamoran-class frigates, also known as the Moj class, were the most capable surface combatants in Iran's conventional navy. Iran had only 6 of them completed before the operation. These ships carried Noor anti-ship cruise missiles, assessed as Iranian derivatives of the Chinese C-802, with a range around 200 kilometers. They carried short-range naval surface-to-air missiles, lightweight torpedoes, and modern radar suites that allowed them to extend the detection and targeting picture for Iran's coastal missile batteries. In the layered naval strategy Iran had developed to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, these frigates served as the eyes and the coordinators, cueing land-based missile batteries and providing targeting data that the coastal systems could not generate on their own. By destroying the Jamoran-class ships in the opening phase of Epic Fury, American forces did not just remove individual weapons platforms. They blinded the coastal defense network that those ships were designed to support. The Iris Dana, sunk in the Indian Ocean by a single Mk-48 torpedo from an American fast attack submarine, was itself a Moj-class frigate. Its destruction carried significance beyond the tactical. The Mk-48 is a heavyweight wire-guided weapon designed to detonate not against the hull of a ship, but beneath the keel, exploiting the water hammer effect to break a ship's spine. A hull penetration can be contained. A keel break cannot. When the Mk-48 detonated beneath the Iris Dana, the ship broke. It sank in minutes. And the location of the kill, hundreds of miles from the Persian Gulf in international waters, where the crew believed they were completely outside the battle space, was a deliberate strategic message. There is no location on Earth where an Iranian warship is safe from an American submarine. That is not rhetoric. It is now a demonstrated fact. The Al-Vand-class frigates, older ships displacing around 1,100 tons with gas turbine sprint speeds approaching 39 knots, were also targeted. Their speed and anti-ship missiles made them dangerous for opportunistic strikes, particularly under the umbrella of Iran's coastal air defense systems. The Bayandor-class corvettes, smaller at around 900 tons but also equipped with C-802 class missiles and torpedo tubes, represented the patrol and denial layer of Iran's Gulf strategy. Both classes were struck at their piers or in the opening hours of the operation before they could sortie. Ships at pier, unable to maneuver, are among the most efficient targets in naval warfare. The intelligence work that confirmed their locations and the electronic warfare that prevented them from receiving warning or coordinating a response made their destruction a near certainty from the moment the targeting list was finalized. Iran's asymmetric naval capability, the IRGC, Navy's large fleet of fast attack craft designed to overwhelm larger warships through swarm tactics, was targeted with equal deliberateness. The IRGC Navy is the force responsible for operations in the confined, shallow waters of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. It is not a blue water force. Its tactical doctrine is built around the idea that dozens of small, fast, missile-armed boats attacking simultaneously from multiple directions can saturate the point defense systems of a carrier strike group or a destroyer, overwhelming their ability to track and engage all threats simultaneously. It is a credible concept in theory. Iranian naval exercises had demonstrated an ability to coordinate these swarm attacks with some level of effectiveness. And it was a doctrine that American naval planners had spent years developing countermeasures against, including Hellfire-armed Seahawk helicopters aboard the Abraham Lincoln, specifically configured for small boat threats, and the surface warfare mission packages on the littoral combat ships operating in the Persian Gulf. But the swarm tactic depends on the small boats surviving long enough to reach weapons range. And the systematic destruction of the IRGC Navy's small boat fleet in the opening hours of Epic Fury, hitting bases and piers before the boats could disperse and sortie, eliminated most of that threat before it could be executed. CENTCOM confirmed that all 11 Iranian warships in the Gulf of Oman at the start of Epic Fury were gone within the first 48 hours. 0 remaining. The statement was blunt, and the accompanying imagery confirmed it. Satellite photos showed multiple fires at Konarak and Bandar Abbas, sunken vessels visible in the harbor, destroyed buildings at the naval headquarters facilities that coordinated Iranian maritime operations. Two specific targets deserve particular attention because of what they represented to Iran's naval modernization and power projection ambitions. The Iris Shahid Bagheri, Iran's drone and helicopter carrier, was struck and destroyed at its berth at Bandar Abbas within the initial hours of Epic Fury. This ship had only entered service with the IRGC Navy on February 6, 2025, barely a year before it was destroyed. Converted from a 240-meter container ship over 2 years of work, it featured a 180-meter ski jump runway and was designed to operate for up to a year at sea without refueling. It represented Iran's attempt to project air power from a naval platform to give the IRGC the ability to launch drone strikes and helicopter operations from the sea as well as from shore. It was one of the most significant investments in Iranian naval capability in a generation. It survived its first year of service by 13 months. The Iris Makran, Iran's first forward base ship, was struck while moored at Bandar Abbas. The Makran represented Iran's ambition to project naval power beyond the Persian Gulf, to sustain operations far from home waters, to challenge American naval presence in the broader Indian Ocean region, rather than simply defending a narrow geographic choke point. It had participated in exercises with Russian and Chinese naval forces. Its destruction, along with the sinking of the Iris Dina in Indian Ocean waters, was a direct answer to Iranian ambitions for blue water naval power projection. You cannot project power from a ship that no longer floats. The submarine dimension of the naval battle requires its own careful analysis, because it goes to the heart of American undersea superiority in a way that will shape naval calculations for the next decade. Iran's submarine fleet was a genuine asymmetric capability. The three Russian-built Kilo-class boats, the Terek, Noor, and Yunus, are among the quietest diesel-electric submarines ever built. Their acoustic signature when running on battery is exceptionally low. They can carry torpedoes, anti-ship cruise missiles, and naval mines. In shallow, thermocline-rich waters like the Gulf of Oman approaches, even a skilled anti-submarine warfare team faces a genuine challenge finding and tracking a Kilo-class boat. In addition to the Kilos, Iran operated more than 20 Ghadir-class midget submarines specifically designed for operations in the shallow waters of the Strait of Hormuz, where they could lay mines, conduct ambush attacks, and complicate the movement of American naval forces in confined waters. American strikes targeted Iranian submarine facilities and command nodes from the beginning of Epic Fury. Satellite imagery taken in the aftermath of strikes on Bandar Abbas showed several submarines present at the facility following the attacks, though the extent of damage to the subsurface fleet was not immediately confirmed. What was confirmed was that one Iranian submarine was struck and damaged, with the Pentagon stating that American forces had put a hole in the side of Tehran's most operational submarine. The sinking of the Iris Dina by torpedo, while not itself a submarine versus submarine engagement, demonstrated that American boats were operating effectively in the same waters as Iranian surface forces, and the implicit message to Iranian submarine commanders was unambiguous. The American submarine force had found their surface ships in international waters hundreds of miles from the war zone. Finding a submarine is harder than finding a surface ship, but it is not impossible. And the asymmetry in undersea capability between the United States Navy and the Iranian submarine force had just been demonstrated in the most visceral terms possible. The operational results of the naval kill chain's execution speak for themselves in the numbers. More than 20 warships sunk or destroyed in the first week. All 11 ships that were in the Gulf of Oman at the start of the operation eliminated within 48 hours. Iran's drone carrier gone. Iran's forward base ship gone. Iran's naval headquarters severely damaged. Missile attacks on American and Allied targets reduced by 90%. The Strait of Hormuz threat, which had dominated strategic planning for the Persian Gulf for 4 decades, functionally eliminated as a near-term operational concern. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The more significant outcome of the naval kill chain's execution is what it means for the strategic calculations of every maritime power that has observed it. China has watched this operation with an intensity that American intelligence analysts describe as total. Beijing's naval expansion over the past 2 decades has been built around a theory of anti-access and area denial that shares significant conceptual overlap with Iran's approach. Swarm tactics, layered missile defenses, saturation attacks designed to overwhelm American point defense systems, shore-based anti-ship missile batteries. The observation that the United States Navy was able to systematically locate, track, and destroy every major element of a force built on these principles in under 48 hours, with apparently minimal risk to American naval assets, will force a comprehensive reassessment of those concepts in Beijing's planning establishments. The questions Chinese naval planners are now asking are not comfortable ones. If American submarines could track Iranian surface ships to international waters hundreds of miles from the conflict zone and kill them with a single torpedo, what confidence should China have that its surface fleet could survive in a contested Pacific environment? If American electronic warfare and cyber operations could collapse Iran's command and control architecture in the opening minutes of a conflict, rendering a capable regional military effectively blind and unable to coordinate a response, what does that mean for China's own investment in those same types of command and control infrastructure? If American carrier aviation, combined with submarine-launched Tomahawks and destroyer-fired cruise missiles, could destroy 48 hours' worth of a regional Navy surface fleet while simultaneously striking nearly 2,000 targets across an entire country, what would the same system do against a larger but structurally similar force? These are questions without comfortable answers. And they are questions that the quiet death of Iran's Navy, executed through a kill chain built over decades and refined through constant operational experience, has placed at the center of every serious strategic conversation happening in Beijing, Moscow, Pyongyang, and every other capital that has built its military planning around the assumption that America's naval advantage could be overcome by quantity, asymmetry, or geographic positioning. The USS Abraham Lincoln is still in the Arabian Sea. The Gerald R. Ford is still operational in supporting waters. The submarines that executed the kill chain, their names and hull numbers still classified for operational security reasons, are still out there, still running, still watching, still ready. Secretary Hegseth said at the Pentagon briefing that American forces had only just begun to fight. The amount of combat power still flowing, still coming, still being projected over Iran was, in his words, multiples of what was currently engaged. The kill chain that destroyed Iran's Navy was not a one-time event. It is a persistent capability maintained by a force that trains for nothing else, funded by a defense budget that dwarfs anything Iran could field in 100 years, and crewed by sailors and officers who understand that the gap between a weapon in the water and a ship on the bottom is measured not in minutes, but in seconds. Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman and the Indian Ocean. The kill chain put it there, and the kill chain is still running. If you want to understand what the next phase of this operation looks like, what options Iran still has, and how limited they are, and what the long-term implications of America's naval dominance mean for the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific, subscribe to Navy Power Decoded. We cover every system, every operation, every strategic development with the depth and precision that this subject demands. The quiet death of Iran's Navy is the loudest strategic signal in a generation. Make sure you understand what it means.